Now I'm starting it from here. The journey started towards the good, healthy, organic foods many years ago from a slight nudge from her daughter. Her concern about the climate change and its connection to food growing practices has led her to learning more about the regenerative practices. She's on the board of directors of Just Foods, a local organization promoting sustainable agriculture and food security. She's an avid gardener and strongly believes that to take care of our health, we must take care of our Mother Earth our, and our soil. Our soil health are governed by the same principle. Today, she is going to talk about soil health and what, as a gardener and as a concerned citizen, we can all do about it. Anji, Amrit ji.
Could you share screen?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody.
I've done it. Go ahead.
Could you share screen, please?
I have done it. I said, please
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay.
No, we're not on the first one. Okay. And good morning, everybody. I would say Sudesh has introduced me and told you that my journey towards healthy food started 25 years ago. But even after 25 years, I would like to tell you I'm not an expert. I'm not a scientist, but I did learn a few things along the way. And as the science and the climate kept changing, I got more and more involved in it because those issues concern us all. But more than that, they concern our coming generations, our children, and our grandchildren. We have seen in the last few years, we've seen climate change. There are more tornadoes, more hurricanes, more floods, more fires. And most of us are aware that fossil fuels add to our climate change. They do put a lot of carbon in the atmosphere, but many of us are not aware that 33% of our emissions do come from agriculture, the way it has been done. Not only that, Ottawa recently issued a proposal for people we had floods in Ottawa the last few years in different areas. So as flood mitigation measures, Ottawa has a proposal for people to change their landscapes and make them more permeable so more water can go into the ground. and less into the sewers and the creeks and the rivers to create floods. So a lot of these issues are connected. We do get floods, but increasing use of water in the agriculture that runs off the dry land also creates droughts. So there are the conventional practices of high-tilling, use of tractors that just degrade our soils, hurt the biology of the soil underneath, and then use of pesticides, fungicides, that has created another issue for our health, but also the health of the soil. That the soil organisms are being destroyed. The agriculture runoffs of high nitrogen fertilizers are getting into the water underneath, and that creates the issue of fish health, the health of other creatures. So the whole ecosystem is connected. Now, when we do the agriculture with just the chemical inputs, the soil itself is getting depleted. It's not regenerating, coming back to us, increasing in volume, and it's the soil sponge. Healthy soil is like a sponge. It absorbs water, it has nutrients, but that's degrading the soils. And over the long term, because soil's own fertility is not there, and it has no capacity to fight the pests and keep the plants healthy, the farmers keep putting more and more inputs, increasing their costs. So there have been a lot of issues around agriculture. And regenerative practices do promise to fix those issues. They're not big technical issues. They are all about the health of the soil, because healthy soil, it makes us healthy. Healthy soil makes us healthy, and it makes other animals healthy. So we're not farmers. You must be thinking, why us? Why do we have to think about it? Because in our own ways, we can all make a difference. We can make a difference in our own health by doing our little gardens, and a lot of different ways. But since we're not farmers, I'm going to focus my talk on how we can help in our gardens, in our landscapes. So this one is, we talked about how the soils are left bare and the tractors are compacting the soils. So what happens when the soils are compacted and we see the rain comes, it just washes off, and it's not penetrating into the soil to give enough water to the soil. And also the bare soils get very hot. And you can see on a hot day, if you walk on a bare surface, whether it's sand or soil or pavement, how much the surface is absorbing heat. So the base in it's also compacted. So there is on your left side, it's compacted and it's not absorbing any water. It's not keeping it in there. So our water tables are getting lower. On the right side, you see the soil, which has a lot of organic matter, and it has built a soil sponge. Imagine how much water will run off your counter if you pour the water on an empty counter. But if you pour it on a sponge, sponge is going to soak a lot of water inside it. So healthy soil, soil with a lot of organic matter, is soaking a lot of water in it. It also feels cooler. The soil that's been planted with the plants is also cooler. So it's cooler to your touch. It's with the water in the soil, plants are growing better. They're putting water into the atmosphere, and those are forming clouds and rain. So a lot of things are gotten dry. Okay, put the next one. Now, healthy soils, the soils have been seen as a dead matter, just like rocks and metal. But soil is a living, dynamic ecosystem. It contains so many microbes. It's just like our microbial system. Soil has a microbial system with a lot of bacteria, with a lot of fungi, with a lot of little creatures. And they're all supporting each other. So in some way, when the little creatures, the worms, the beetles, through the soil, they are digging the soil, they are decomposing the dead matter and the live plants that are under the air and above ground, some of them the dead debris. It goes into the air and they build that soil sponge when they're there. So organic matter feeds them. Organic matter is compost, it's the leaves, it's the anything that's came from the live plants. So they're all doing that. And when the ecosystem is intact, when we are not disturbing it with large machines, with tilling, it just keeps going and it keeps decomposing, it keeps building the soil. And so that way the soil is being constantly built. And so the fungi in the soils sends the water and the nutrients back and forth underneath. So trees store water, they're sending the water to the other plants underneath are sending the nutrients there. But when that fungi is destroyed, the system cannot do its job. And so diversity of plants is helping each other. So let's see what the soil needs. Soil and plants, we all know they need sun's energy. In the sun, the green leaves capture, they act as solar panels, they capture the carbon from the atmosphere, they send it to the soil through the photosynthesis, it goes into the soil, it feeds the microbes, and then the system helps when there's a lot of carbon is stored, the soil sponges build, so getting a lot of energy into the sun from growing a lot of plants, the soil is going to be healthier. Water, we all know the plants need water, the soil needs water underneath, but the healthy soil is capable of storing a lot of water from the rain. Rain comes, it absorbs enormous amount of water and it's stored in there. So all it's, and then there are mineral and other nutrients through all the interaction of microbes and creatures and organic matter, the soil stays healthy, so it does have a lot of minerals on its own. And it's the fungi hyphae, which has its wings, are able to pass it back and forth. Now, when one of these things is not there, if the sun's energy is not captured, the soil sponge cannot be built. If the water is not stored, you're going to have higher needs for water. So all these elements are integrated into the soil. So when one is degraded, the other one gets disturbed as well. So if we want to look at a healthy system, we need to go to the forest. Forest is undisturbed, healthy ecosystem. So let's see what we see in the forest. All plants are, there are a variety of trees, not just abundance, but lot of variety. Okay, I think I'm a little bit ahead of myself, so I'm going to quickly go through this slide. So regenerative agriculture is called beyond organic because it's not just focusing on the human health, it's focusing on the health of the whole ecosystem and particular the soil. So regenerative principles are thinking of the whole ecosystem, of the climate change, of that. And forest is an example, and we'll look into that more so we can see that for ourselves. It does have a large diversity of plant and animal life. It stays green most of the year. So let's, yeah, slides are a bit mixed up here. But if we go to the forest, we're going to see a variety of trees. Lots of, there's some evergreens, some other trees, but abundance of trees and that. Not just trees. If you look underneath, you're going to see a lot of other bushes, some with edible fruit on them. There'll be berry bushes, there'll be other bushes, some flowering bushes, and then under close to the ground, you're going to see mushrooms and a lot of little vegetation, trilliums, weeds, poison ivy, all kinds of things. And along with plant life, the forest has a lot of creatures in it. There are little creatures, there are birds, there are moles, there are diggers. So when the leaves, nobody's watering the forest, nobody is tilling the forest, nobody is doing any digging and fertilizing and running tractors over it. So the forest is the ecosystem that's taking care of itself without any human intervention. And large number of creatures, the birds are going to eat the seeds, they're going to drop them, trees are going to drop their seeds. It keeps regenerating itself by growing new trees. When leaves fall, nobody is raking the leaves, they're decomposing into the air, into the soil, and they're creating more matter into the soil. So we can take lessons from the forest. So the sponge of the soil is the important lesson, that we need to have a lot of organic matter, the compost, deep plant debris, leaves, they can all make our compost right on the garden. So that's organic matter on the garden beds. You leave that at the end of when it's fall season, we can put the leaves on our garden, and with the snow falling, with the water from the snow, they will start to decompose and add fertility to the soil. At the end of the season, you can leave the plants on the ground, and the birds will eat the food, the seeds from top of the plants. The matter will decompose, and in spring it can be, the top layer can be removed to do your planting. Tilling disturbs the soil greatly. It loses the fertility. It loses the soil sponge because the life is being destroyed. So the microbial life is not there, and fungi is not there to do its job. So for growing your garden, you can just lightly rake the top layer and plant it that way. So diversity is the key to our whole ecosystem. So growing one kind of monocultures are the one that destroyed the soil initially, even when we didn't have pesticides and things. And because all the plants have different microbial life, and if you don't have the different plants help each other by sending the minerals and water back and forth. So manure and fish meal can introduce live organisms into your soil. If your soil is depleted, you don't see the microbes. We only see with very powerful microscope, but you can see the worms and other life in your soil. If you see there's no life under there, no worms, you can introduce live organisms with manure and fish meal, and that would start to reactivate your soils and generate microbes in the soil, and then the worms and things will come. Have a large diversity of plants plant some different kinds of vegetables, plant some perennial bushes around it, and things, flowers and things in your landscape. So in our small gardens, we can interplant the vegetables, a row of beans, a row of lettuces and things, it'll keep your soil covered because some vegetables will grow a lot faster and others are slower. So when you're planting your carrots take a long time to germinate and come up, but radishes come up very quickly. So with your carrots, you plant your radishes in between, and by the time carrot plants start to grow, your radishes will be ready to be harvested. And then that will give more space for your carrots. So it's increasing, if you're maximizing the use of space, you're having more green plants all the time. And greens and root vegetables can be planted very early in the spring. Most of us have kept our gardens from end of May, early June to September. And before that, soil is left bare, before and after. But we can start our gardening very early, planting greens in there, planting root vegetables there. And these will also keep growing late into the season, towards the, actually before, till the snows come. My last harvest of kale was in December last year. So those kind of plants are really good to grow, greens, but we don't want to grow greens all year round and not the other vegetables. Now, tomatoes are very slow growing, and also initially when you're planting, they are 1.5 feet apart. But in between, you can throw methi seeds, you can plant spinach, you can plant radishes, and by the time when the tomatoes start to grow, initially they'll shade your spinach and methi, which doesn't need the heat. And when they're big, you can harvest your other produce is ready to be harvested. So different plants have different nutrient needs. So you can balance that by planting them in rows according to their needs. Beans set the nitrogen in the soil. Greens need the nitrogen. So if you have rows of bean plants and row of lettuce or kale or Swiss chard, you're providing food for both of them. Beans are providing the nitrogen. So interplanting vegetables help. Planting flowers like marigolds, nasturtium, glandula deters some pests. They also look beautiful. They also provide food. Actually, all these plants, flowers are edibles. So you can add them to your salads, the flowers and leaves can be added to your salads, and they're deterring pests. Aromatic herbs such as mint and basil, they'll repel some pests. And perennial vegetation planted close to your garden, especially when it's flowering vegetation that's flowering during the different seasons, the flowers are attracting birds and birds and butterflies and bees to pollinate your vegetables. Now, we're talking about pollinating. California has been protecting the bees in for their almond cultivation because almond trees are not, they didn't have enough bees pollinating their almond trees. So we have those kind of issues. So bringing the pollinators back has been a big issue, and a lot of organizations are helping. Trees help break up the clay soil with their long roots, and they also, those long roots penetrate into the clay soils and break up the soils and make them more porous. They also have different fungi, mycorrhizal fungi from the trees is capable of transporting water to all the plants. So when you have trees on your property, it does help with your garden. You can cover your landscape. Not all of us do a lot of gardening, but make sure some kind of green vegetation stays on most of your landscape. Because again, paved non-permeable surfaces are heating the planet, and they're contributing to the climate change and the floods and the droughts. So now, last part is if we can't do the gardening, if we don't have the space, if we don't have the energy, where can we go for that? So if space is the issue and you want to garden, community gardens provide a good solution. And there are about 200 community gardens in our area. So organizations such as Just Food Farm can provide the guidance to which community garden is close to you. And you can join, have the company of people there to garden, learn from other people, and have fun along the way. If you do have your space, but no energy to garden, you may want to look for if any people around you would like to use your space to grow food, and people will share the bounty with you. Shopping in the local markets for your produce supports the farmers, small farmers who are using many sustainable practices, if not the complete regeneration practice. But they're moving towards that, so you get fresh, healthy food. Ottawa has many, many markets during the summer and fall, during the growing season, but market in Lansdowne and the organic market, they are open year round. So you can get food from there. Organic market is on Riverside and Walkley. And I think you all know that where Lansdowne is. And but I do want to tell you that Byward Market and Bartail Market are not designated local markets. They have many vendors there who are bringing the produce from as far as Mexico. And so make sure the Just Food has given them Savor Ottawa boards that are hanging over the stalls, and you can see whether the stall is it by the farmer or a vendor who is bringing produce from far away. So many health food local farmers are very good with having conversation with you. So you can ask them what kind of practices they use. And many health food stores sell organic food that has been grown by our Quebec farmers. And one of the places that I mainly go to natural food pantry if I haven't been able to go to the market, and they do have much of their food coming from Ontario and Quebec farmers. So that is some of the hints for your garden and for getting the healthy food. I know I would have missed a lot of things. I'm not used to reading my presentations. So if you have any questions, and please ask. You can email me later as well, and you will get the presentation in email from Sudesh. So thank you. And I think I finished in like at least 10:40. So,
All right. Anji, are there any questions from the floor? Looks like you've given us a lot to think about, Amritji.
well,
Yeah, we have 2 raised hands. Hold on a second. Let's see. Madhu, Dilip Desai, unmute yourself first, please.
Namaskar.
Nice
Mera
presentation.
question, it's a very nice presentation. Really lots of information about gardening. And I have problem with the Japanese beetle on my roses. What to do with that?
Japanese beetles have been a problem everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, what you will notice, there are, of course, we stay away from pesticides and things. So the best way is you take a jar of soapy water
So
and you just go close to the point where the Japanese beetle is and you just knock it down. And they're not very smart. They do end up right in your jar. And you can keep picking them. It is a hard way, but that is the only way. The other thing you can do is that you will notice that they have favorite plants. In my garden, I see that they congregate on rose bushes and potentilla plants. And so you know that they're there and you can get a good harvest for them. And if they really bother you, the only way might be to get rid of those plants that are attracting them. Some people have used pheromone, what are they called? Like they're pheromone traps that they hang up. But that is maybe okay for your garden.
yeah,
But it brings a lot of
right.
beetles
Right. We
in
did
the
that.
area. So your neighbors will hate you for it because it does bring them from more than a couple of kilometers. They're going to be coming for your pheromone traps.
Okay.
And
Soap water, can we spray for soap water on?
that doesn't help.
No.
That doesn't help at all. They've been a problem for years now.
Yes.
And that seems to be the only way to control them. It's going around, flicking them into your jar. That is the only way.
I think
Thank you very much.
we're running out of time. Just 2 quick questions. First from Arjun and then from Prabir Yogi. Then we move on to Mr. Anil Sukhij's presentation.
Namaskar, Sudesh. This was a wonderful presentation.
Just wanted to mention that I had an opportunity when I lived and worked in Britain as a consultant. I had an opportunity of working for 4 years in the agriculture sector. We were preparing Britain for its entry into economic community that was known as European Economic Community, and it was based on agriculture sector. We spent 4 years to prepare Britain for its entry and make its agriculture sector much more efficient than other countries in Europe. In other countries in Europe had very intensive farming, and we recommended non-intensive farming for Britain. And we recommended that they should grow crops for 2 years in a row, and the third year they should put it in fallow, in fact, fallow means let it rest and regenerate itself, And same thing we did in many other areas, like they have a very large, what you call beef industry, mostly in Scotland, sheep in Wales, and most of the Northern Ireland and Britain, England was agriculture sector and Arab, what you call the dairy industry and so on. So all these were integrated to be able to use the waste from animals, into storage and let it decompose, before we could put them on the soil. So we put a lot of investment into building ponds and tanks, to be able to put that waste material from the animals. Anyway, I thought I'll just mention that.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to respond to your first thing about the bare soils. Now, that used to be the accepted practice, leaving the soils bare to regenerate. But that would really take a long, long time. And the bare soil was actually degenerating the soils. You do, instead of leaving that soil empty, what regenerative farming does is plant green cover crops. And those cover crops then help to regenerate the soil much faster, and because the bare soil is not capturing sun's energy, it's not even keeping the water in. It will happen, but it'll happen in 50 years or 100 years to generate a little bit soil. So
grass on it, when it was put in soil.
Yeah. So
when the soil was put in fallow, they used to grow a special grass on it for it to regenerate.
Right. That is cover crops. That now cover crops is the accepted. So fallow does not mean leaving it bare. And
no, not bare, but they used to grow grass on.
So yes, that is the ideal one. But in our gardens, since we cannot leave them fallow, there's not enough space to leave them. Intensive planting, because we're doing all of our gardening with the hands. Intensive practices do work that way, that they're constantly leaving the matter on the ground, and then it's being built by leaving the residues and putting the straw on for mulch and practices such as that. But in agriculture, you're right. Doing the cover crops, whether you do it during the season.
Yeah, most important thing was that we created this, put a lot of investment into recycling of the waste,
right,
back into the farm.
Arjun, I think we're going to have to move on.
Thank you.
I need this time. So, Prabir, if you have a quick question and a quick comment, you mute. Unmute kar lena pehle. You need to unmute. Hanji.
No, he did not unmute yet.
You still mute, Prabir.
Unmute.
No, you still mute.
Yeah, he's still mute.
I will ask my question, but let us put off the discussion until some other time because it's a very general question.
Andy.
And that is that it seems to be that modern agriculture, starting from North America and spreading all over the world, is based on the principle of maximizing the amount of yield that you can get from a particular piece of land. And to do this, they do all the practices such as deep tilling using tractors, monoculture so that a field has only one crop, extensive use of external inputs, including pesticides, fungicides, chemical fertilizers, and so on. And what this does is it increases the yield, but the practice itself is sustainable. However, since we are used to cheap foods, this is what supports the practice, because we won't say, all right, go back to the more traditional forms of agriculture and we'll pay 2 or 3 times as much for the food. So instead of spending time discussing this today, maybe we could have this discussion at some other meeting.
Thank you.
Well, actually, we have spent a lot of time in the last few months looking into these things. Regenerative practices within a couple of years produce a lot more food.
By the way,
They
these
extend the
practices have been accelerated by what we call the Green Revolution.
Well, it's being adopted in a big way in many areas of India and Africa. They've been they haven't had big corporations, and they're the ones who are adopting it very quickly, and it's showing wonderful results, increasing the yields tremendously. So it is the way of the future, and it's being accepted now by many farmers, even in prairies. Many farmers are adopting it, and especially in an integrated farm with animals and that, it's much easier, and it's helping in a big way. That's
Thank you, Amrit.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was very informative. Thank you very much. We'll be posting it on our website. The